In this video, we'll give you the most recent update about the backlog at U.S. consulates and embassies worldwide, as well as the backlog at the National Visa Center, NVC. This is based on a recent Q&A that the Department of State had with the American Immigration Lawyers Association that I'm a member of, and I'll be sharing with you all the key highlights from that conversation. So what are you waiting for? I'll see you on the other side. Hello everybody, welcome back to our immigration channel. This is the place where we get the most up-to-date news, up-to-date information about immigration, and everything else that you need to make your immigration journey less stressful. So let's talk about the most up-to-date information about the backlog at U.S. embassies and consulate worldwide and the National Visa Center. The NVC is currently holding almost 500,000 documented qualified applications that are ready to be scheduled for interviews. The same problem we have with non-immigrant visas. Before the pandemic, U.S. embassies and consulates worldwide were issuing over 700,000 non-immigrant visas every single month. Currently, less than 100,000 non-immigrant visas are issued every single month. This is a drop of more than 85% in non-immigrant visa issuance all over the world. In order for embassies and consulates to truly reopen on a consistent basis, the Biden administration must do something more than what they're doing right now. They have to force embassies to conduct interviews remotely, on Zoom and online. They have to start waiving immigrant visa interviews just like USCIS is doing inside the United States. USCIS has started interview waivers as of May of 2020, and that helped them overcome a backlog that otherwise would have continued through 2021. They're doing so. Why can't the State Department do the same? We'll cover some of the upcoming suggestions that the State Department could consider also in this video, but let's dive into the questions as provided by the Department of State in the most recent Q&A with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And also from a recent Q&A that the Department of State had online with their representative, Nir Vermillion, that also provides some information that could be relevant to you as well. One of the most important questions that was raised during the Department of State Q&A with the American Immigration Lawyers Association was how many of the consulate posts have fully resumed operation, and if so, how many and which ones? And here's the response. The status of an embassy or consulate's operations changes in line with local conditions. Post websites are regularly updated to reflect their operational status, and this information can be accessed at travel.state.gov. As of May 12, 2021, 133 of our 139 immigrant visa processing posts are processing at least some routine immigrant visa services. The remainder of those are able to do just emergency services. 160 of 223 non-immigrant visa processing posts are offering some routine non-immigrant visa appointments. The remaining 63 posts remain closed for all but emergency and mission critical services. As you can see, less than 150 posts are actually open and operating on a semi-normal basis. This can change on a daily basis depending on the country conditions, depending on how many vaccinations are available. In fact, the State Department also mentioned in the same Q&A that depending on regions where they have more vaccination available for local residents and staff, that means that will also speed up the opening of the consulates in the particular locations, like Israel, for example, where routine visa processing completely resumed for both immigrant and non-immigrant visas. But other parts of Europe is definitely much more slow, and they're waiting for more opportunities to get vaccinated and for the consulates to be reopened. So let's move on to the NVC and let's see what the Department of State had to say about the current backlog at the NVC. The question that was addressed to the Department of State was that given that the current backlog at NVC is more than 500,000 cases are sitting and waiting at NVC, documented qualified to be interviewed, applicants are concerned that their cases may fall through the cracks, they may not be sent for an interview, and that their delays are going to continue forever. Also, based on the most recent update that they provided, cases from NVC are being sent to the consulates on a first-come, first-served basis as soon as they become documentary qualified. Given all this confusion, the question that was presented to the NVC is what steps are they taking to make sure that cases are not falling through the cracks and that cases still remain active while applicants are sitting and waiting for their turn to be called for an interview. And here's the response from the NVC. NVC has started a pilot in which all case parties are sent an electronic notification 60 days after their case has reached documentary complete status if the case has not been scheduled. The notification assures applicants that they don't need to take any further action and that their case will be scheduled for interview in a first-in, first-out manner. As soon as the interviewing embassy or consulate can accommodate them, that message will be repeated every 120 days thereafter until the case is scheduled. So that's good news that the NVC is actually being proactive about it. They started this email notification pilot, and also they said that they may come up with a system where they're going to be announcing on their website which cases are documentary qualified in a particular month and which cases they are working on at a particular month, so the applicants will be aware as to where they stand in the line. Another question that came up at this DOS meeting is whether the State Department will consider Zoom meetings or video conference meetings to help more applicants to go through the interviews and fight the significant backlog this way. So let's hear the response of Nir Vermillion on a video live stream that he responded to this question last week.
That's another good question. Obviously, we're doing Zoom and YouTube and things like that here. Technology has changed quite a bit. But I'll give you a simple, straightforward answer, which, again, may not be the most welcome answer, but it's immigrant and non-immigrant visa applicants are required by statute and regulation to appear in person before a consular officer. So it comes down to statute and regulation. As a consular officer who's worked in the field, I also should talk about, there are benefits with this process. National security is our top priority when we adjudicate visa applications. Each prospective traveler undergoes extensive screening, and as part of that, we have this interview process where our officers not only look at the visa application, but they talk to the applicant. They look at the body language. They figure out what the applicant is saying to make an informed decision about whether the person's eligible and whether there are any national security related concerns. So that's more of a long-winded answer, but the short answer, as mentioned, is based in statute and regulation.
So as you can see from Neil's response and also from the notes of the DOS meeting with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, Zoom meetings or video conference meetings are not possible by statute. By statute, they have to actually interview applicants to determine whether they are qualified to enter the United States, whether they receive a non-immigrant visa or an immigrant visa. So Zoom interviews are not going to happen anytime soon. Another question that came up at the recent DOS meeting was about students on non-immigrant visas. So the question is, do F1 and M1 students who are going to start school before August 1st, 2021 need the national interest exception to enter the United States? This is what the Department of State had to say. Students and academics subject to these proclamations due to their presence in China, Iran, Brazil, or South Africa may qualify for a national interest exception only if their academic program begins August 1st, 2021 or later. Students with a valid F1, M1 visas intending to begin or continue an academic program, including optional practical training, starting August 1st, 2021 or later, do not need to contact an embassy or consulate to travel. They may enter the United States no earlier than 30 days before the start of their academic program. Students seeking to apply for a new F1 or M1 visas should check the status of visa services at the nearest embassy or consulate. Those applicants who are found to be otherwise qualified for an F1 or M1 will automatically be considered for a national interest exception to travel. So if you're an M1 or F1 student and you intend to study before August 1st, 2021, you will qualify for a national interest exception to enter the United States to continue your studies. So these are good news. So what is the State Department actually doing to address these backlogs? Well, the first thing they did is set up a 4-tier process to start cutting through the backlog. The 4-tier process, as I mentioned in the previous videos, is the following. Tier 1, immediate relative adoption cases and age-out children under the age of 21. This is Tier 1 immigrant visas. Tier 2 is immigrant visas and fiancé visas that are being processed in this order. Tier 3, all the family preference categories for immigrant visas. And finally, Tier 4 are all the employment-based immigrant visas that are being processed in that order. So that's going to help a little bit with the backlog. The other thing they're doing is bringing more staff. They're training more staff to be able to deal with the backlog and expanding their facilities beyond just the interview windows to be able to interview people in other areas of the consulates. This is depending on the consulate, depending on the country where they're doing this. But for example, in Spain, in Madrid, Spain, they have definitely expanded the facilities outside of the regular interview areas to the back of the embassy. In Israel, they have other areas where they are able to interview people, as most of the country is vaccinated, so facilities are reopening. So many of these consulates are finding creative ways and efficient ways to be able to facilitate interviews in a way that would be more effective for the particular country where they're at. But again, it really depends on the country conditions and on the specific particular embassies. So yes, training more staff will help, reworking the facilities will help, but we definitely need more from the State Department to cut through this enormous backlog. Final question, let's talk about the DV Lottery 2021 winners. The question is, will they get expedited interviews because they have to complete the process before September 30th, 2021? And here's the response of the Department of State. The Department of State is making every effort to process as many diversity visa cases as possible, consistent with other priorities despite the severe operational constraints and backlog resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. However, as a result of COVID-19 related restrictions and complications, the number of diversity visas issued will likely not approach the statutory ceiling in fiscal year 2021. Beyond that, we should note that selection in the DV lottery is not a guarantee of a visa or interview in any program year, as we always select more participants and we will be issued visas in order to make sure that we don't run out of applications before the end of the fiscal year. And every year, there are applicants whose cases couldn't be adjudicated before the end of the relevant fiscal year for a broad range of reasons. So as you can see, it's a very diplomatic response, almost kind of like a way for the State Department to say, you know what, we can't guarantee that all the DV winners for 2021 will be able to get their interviews because there are other factors impacting, including more visas that are being selected. But the reality is that if embassies and consulates are not going to be able to reopen correctly, they're not going to be able to process cases properly, many DV lottery winners will be missing their visas, and there's not much you can do except for probably litigation, and we'll see what happens. So hopefully these updates were helpful. We talked about embassies reopening, we talked about the NVC backlog, we talked about what the State Department is actually doing to cut through this backlog and make processing of visas more efficient. As soon as we have more information, I promise to keep you posted. As always, if you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos, and give us a big like so YouTube will be able to show this video to more people just like you. If you like this video, make sure you share it with somebody that needs that information, and let us know what other videos you would like for me to make. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.